I began to worry that there may be a thief in our home. The sight of shoes by the door, both men's and women's, made me frown. Since neither my husband nor I were meant to be home, our house ought to be empty. Nonetheless, I sensed that someone was present in the restroom as well as at the door. Someone was clearly having fun because of the loud, vulgar voice coming from the restroom. While it's common for husbands to invite their mistresses home while their spouses are away, this situation isn't plausible. My spouse was standing right next to me, palely staring toward the lavatory, so this voice couldn't be his. I'm Jessica, and Adam and I have been wed for 3 years. We are not yet parents because we are both employed. Nonetheless, I think we have a contented and affectionate life, going out or traveling on our days off. Fortunately, neither our in-laws nor parents put any pressure on us to get a family. Since they actually reside close by, we are able to keep our positive relationship going and get together for family dinners. Our in-laws suggested that we rent the lovely, slightly older home. Once a month, on average, we have dinner parties. My mom and I always cook the meal, and we spend the evenings eating food supplied by our in-laws and drinking Dad's favorite wine. Mom had visited that day in the morning to assist with setting for the dinner party, but she appeared abnormally quiet and depressed. She voiced her concerns as she was chopping the ingredients, asking herself, "Do we really need this much? We may not have enough time to complete it all." She wasn't like this at all. "What's wrong, Mom? For today we've simply prepared the standard amount," I inquired. She gave me a startled look before laughing it off. "Dear, I apologize. I'm concerned since Dad hasn't been eating as much as he used to." "Are you serious? Does Dad have a bad cold?" I inquired. Since his early years, my dad has been a self-made businessman, a self-proclaimed entrepreneur. He's never wavered in his work ethic. I hardly remember my dad playing with me on his days off when I was a kid. I worry for him, even though I don't remember him being around that much. The idea that he could be working himself sick worries me. Mom was hesitant to talk at first, perhaps so as not to frighten me, but she did talk when she did. It's not a disease. Although Dad is in excellent health, he has been acting aloof lately. He has been critiquing my dinner and remarking on how simple my outfit is. Why would he say such things? I pondered. That he would say that to Mom, who has always been the center of our family, is terrible. Mom, though, dismissed it with a "I'm fine." Perhaps Dad's recent company startup has caused him a little stress. Even though I remained worried, we allowed the conversation to wane and returned to cooking despite her assurances. We were going to cook Dad a special dinner today, complete with his favorite steak and dessert, to help him with his new business. My spouse, Adam, was preoccupied as usual and couldn't unwind until everything was immaculate. He always makes sure the living room and entry are spotless before we entertain company, even when it's just the family. He is very careful about cleanliness. Dad, my mother-in-law Teresa, and my father-in-law Eric arrived as I was finishing up the garden. "Jessica, can I have a word?" I was checking the pan to fry the steak when Teresa shouted out to me. She entered the kitchen with a serious expression on her face and handed me a box that appeared to be a present without saying anything. Perplexed, I accepted it, and to my surprise, when opening it, was the emblem of a well-known steakhouse. There were thick, excellent steaks inside that smelled so good. As it happened, we had unintentionally made the same dish. I figured that cooking fewer steaks would be a simple enough solution. It was not the first time our gifts had happened to match, after all. "Wow, did you go out of your way to buy this?" I asked with a smile. We could have asked about the steaks, but we heard it was a celebration. It feels a little strange. Shall we simply serve today's gifted steaks? "But you and Adam can still eat them, right?" Teresa retorted. "Since we're older now, eating too much meat may seem a little heavy." I was at a loss for words. Since Mom had assisted with the preparations, it felt improper to prepare so much food that would be wasted because everyone in the family is getting close to 50. You need to have made a statement. How callous, Teresa said as she walked out of the kitchen. She didn't see my reaction as she left with the steaks, but I was astonished by her remarks. That was the first time I had heard someone say something like that. In the past, we never planned our gifts together, and even when we did end up giving each other the same thing, we usually laughed it off. Previously, we had always given each other chocolates or similar things as gifts. I was a little uncomfortable, but I didn't give it much thought because I reasoned that she might have been offended by the pricey gift. Dad was ecstatic about the steak from the upscale restaurant during the dinner gathering. With a quick glance, Mom appeared to comprehend my predicament and obligingly pretended to be just as thrilled about the steaks we had cooked. Teresa, Eric, and Dad departed, and Mom cleverly made beef stew using the remaining ingredients. Before they were cooked, we could have still had the steak, I remarked. You would have grown weary of steak together. Mom said, putting her portion in a food container and saying, "This way, you can take it home." Mom made a great beef stew, and even though I felt a little awful about it, Adam and I devoured it rapidly as the flavors melded together. I later learned that Dad wasn't happy with the stew, calling it out of date, even though it was delicious. Mom's meek little smile made me feel even more angry than I had before. Yet, I was unable to let go of my anger. After that dinner party, I received an unexpected message from Adam a few weeks later. Due to developments on the client's end, the overnight business trip he was scheduled to take had to be canceled. He informed me that he will return home as normal. I had intended to spend some time at my parents' house since he was expected to be away for 5 days. But my intentions changed when he returned home. I informed my mother over the phone before meeting Adam to go home. I noticed something odd when we got home. Did we forget to turn off the lights? Certain that I had turned everything off before we left, I inquired. Since there was a light on close to the entryway, I apologize for wasting the electricity. Adam, however, reassured me, adding, "Don't worry about it," as he put the front door key in. Then all of a sudden, he was silent. I said, "What's wrong?" Adam said, "The front door is unlocked," which caused me to froze. Contemplating the possibility of an intruder, I discreetly removed my phone and began recording. I gave Adam a gesture in my direction, and he cautiously opened the front door. "Whose shoes are these?" he inquired, gesturing to a selection of women's pumps and men's leather shoes in the foyer. These sneakers obviously did not belong to us. I might have thought Adam was cheating by bringing another woman home if these were his shoes and he wasn't present. However, the fact that he was standing directly next to me indicated that there was an intruder in our home. Adam, sensing my concern, reached for his umbrella, prepared to use it if necessary, and stepped forward. We saw that the light in the living room was on, and that food was strewn all over the table, as though it had just been purchased. It didn't seem like a burglar would take such action. I pondered. Subsequently, I detected a voice approaching, and it became evident that the noise originated from the restroom. The person who was speaking was in the restroom. Adam was quite frightened, and I could understand why. The voice was gritty and disturbing. The idea that someone was using our house without our knowledge unnerved us. Curious and worried about who could be doing this, I slowly opened the bathroom door and immediately saw some clothes thrown around. "Ah!" I gasped, unable to hold back the sound. The clothes were unmistakably my dad's. His large jacket, neatly hung on a hanger, was the one he had worn at the dinner party just the other day. The shirt and pants, carelessly discarded, were all too familiar. Mom had left just a few hours ago, so there was no way she could be here. It looked like Dad had brought another woman into my home for an affair. The realization made me frown as I looked up at Adam, wondering how I could explain this to him. He was staring, pale-faced, at a necklace resting on top of the washing machine. I recognized the necklace and the earrings beside it. They belonged to my mom. "This can't be, Mom," Adam said. His words confirmed it. The people using our home for their affair were my dad and Teresa. I pulled Adam, who seemed ready to burst in on them, back to the living room. Moving away from the echoing voices seemed to help him calm down a bit. "Shouldn't we call your mom and my dad?" Adam suggested, though he seemed unsure. The thought of bringing Mom and Eric here now felt like it would lead to a crisis for both families. But I couldn't just ignore what was happening. The vulgar noises were still coming from the bathroom, suggesting they wouldn't come out anytime soon. I contacted Mom, and Adam reached out to Eric right away. "It's about Dad," Adam said. "Your dad told me he was going golfing today. He left early this morning and won't be back until tonight. Should I tell him to call you when he gets back?" "It seems that Dad is at home with Teresa," I said, unable to mention what was actually happening in the bathroom. But that was enough for Mom to understand the seriousness of the situation. In a tense voice, she said, "I'll be right there," and hung up. Less than 20 minutes later, Mom arrived, looking pale, with Eric right behind her, utterly bewildered. The voices had stopped, but we could still hear the shower running. Thankfully, the loud voices that had filled the hallway earlier were no longer heard. "Adam, what do you mean Teresa is here? I told you Mom went on a day trip with friends and won't be back until tonight," Eric asked, full of questions. We had informed him that Dad was with someone, but whether he was confused or just didn't want to accept it, he avoided looking toward the bathroom. Feeling sorry for Eric, Adam signaled to me, and I started recording on my phone again. Adam made no effort to hide his approach as he stormed into the bathroom. "Hey, what the heck are you doing in our house?" Adam shouted as he pushed the room door open, making a dull sound. Screams from Dad and Teresa were followed by loud arguing between Dad and Adam. Adam, now standing in the doorway, grumbled in disgust. I grabbed a bath towel and tossed it into the bathroom, desperately wanting to avoid seeing them make it. I really didn't want to see that behind me. Mom, no longer able to hold back, pushed past me and stormed into the bathroom. She shoved Adam and Teresa aside, and with a voice I'd never heard from her before, dragged Dad out of the room. Eric, finally mustering his courage, followed Mom into the bathroom and pulled Teresa out. Both of them hurriedly dressed in their scattered clothes, and within minutes, they were sitting in the hallway with their hair still damp. All of us, including me, were panting heavily, our shoulders rising and falling with each breath. Mom broke the silence with a thin voice. "Why her?" Her question was the start of Dad and Teresa's explanations. It all began with Teresa developing a crush on Dad. Since Dad is a company president, he has connections with some flashy industries. He pays much more attention to his appearance than most men his age, and even I have to admit, he looks stylish and sophisticated. Teresa reportedly fell for Dad the moment they met, captivated by his demeanor. Their relationship started to grow during the family gatherings we organized for Adam's and my wedding. Teresa, trying to show herself as a good person, eagerly took charge of planning the dinner parties, gradually getting closer to Dad. At one of these dinner parties, she finally worked up the courage to confess her feelings. Adam, looking sick to his stomach, glared at Teresa. But Dad was also part of the problem. He was drawn to Teresa, who dressed in bold makeup and flashy clothes, exuding a feminine allure in contrast to Mom, who quietly took care of the home. But both Dad and Teresa had their own families. Mom often worked at the same company as Dad, and on Dad's days off, Eric usually had a similar schedule, so they needed a place to meet in secret. Surprisingly, they chose our home. Adam and I have a hobby of taking short trips and staying at nearby hotels during long weekends, which inadvertently gave them the opportunity. Teresa would say, "It's not safe to leave the house empty for too long, so I'll check on it," as a way to confirm our absence. Then she would contact Dad. Since we were neighbors and often shared our plans without suspicion, our house became their secret meeting place. We never gave them a spare key, thinking it was impossible for them to enter. But it seems they secretly took a key during one of the dinner parties and made a copy. They were careful to leave no trace of their presence in our house. They brought their own food, took all the trash with them, collected any hair from the drain after using the bathroom, and wiped down any moisture before leaving. This time, Dad contacted Teresa after hearing that I was going back to my parents' house because of Adam's business trip. I had only informed Mom about the change in plans, leading to this unexpected encounter. If we hadn't discovered it now, who knows how long we would have been deceived. Naturally, both Dad and Teresa were served with divorce papers by their spouses. They faced claims for compensation during the divorce proceedings and were disowned by Adam and me. Although Dad and Teresa initially admitted to what they had done, they later claimed we were lying and had no evidence. However, I had recorded everything on my phone, and when I presented that as evidence, the divorce proceedings went smoothly. With the settlement money, we moved into a new apartment. Adam, who already had a bit of a germophobia, developed a complete aversion to the room after that day, and now refuses to even go near it. I also found it too painful to keep living in a house that had been used for their affair, so I fully agreed to move. Now, Mom, who has lost all love for Dad, lives with us after the divorce was finalized. Teresa, on the other hand, seemed quite pleased with herself. She became openly defiant, maybe influenced by Dad, and accepted the divorce settlement and compensation without much resistance. She moved in with Dad right after the divorce, and they got married, finally getting what they wanted, being together. It seemed like everything was going perfectly for them, with Teresa becoming the wife of a company president and looking forward to a great life ahead. However, their plans quickly went wrong. Dad's new business venture failed, and the company's performance rapidly declined, like a balloon losing air. When Mom heard about this, she simply nodded as if to say it was expected. "Who do you think was holding everything together all this time?" she said. It was Mom who had been quietly managing the complaints about Dad's harsh business tactics, both inside and outside the company, and supporting the business behind the scenes. She handled a major part of the company's finances and dealt with clients. Naturally, she resigned from the company when the divorce happened, and Dad, eager to get rid of her, didn't ensure a proper handover. As a result, the company was left with unhappy employees, and many of them followed Mom's lead and resigned, causing a staffing shortage. Dad had always believed that it was a wife's duty to support her husband, so he naturally expected Teresa to take over Mom's role. However, Teresa, who had always been a housewife, didn't understand the business at all and was of no help. The mass resignation of employees, fueled by the scandal of Dad's divorce, became widespread gossip, and clients began to pull out from Dad's company, citing poor performance. Dad's company couldn't last even half a year and soon went bankrupt. Their house and assets were seized, and they were left with significant debt, including unpaid wages. They managed to find a place in a cheap apartment, living a difficult life. Despite his age and wanting a company that would treat him as a president, Dad couldn't secure a new job. Naturally, his frustration grew, and he turned to gambling as a way to relieve his stress. But even that wasn't enough. He began to blame Teresa, saying none of this would have happened if it weren't for the affair. "It was Teresa who seduced me." His anger led to him becoming violent towards Teresa. Teresa, struggling to make ends meet with part-time jobs and desperately trying to support Dad, grew disillusioned with him. As their situation worsened, he sank deeper into his gambling addiction, wasting even the money they needed for living expenses. Unable to bear Dad's constant verbal abuse, Teresa eventually fled the apartment. She ended up at Eric's house, where Adam had grown up. Adam and I happened to be visiting Eric, who had become somewhat reclusive due to the emotional strain of the divorce. So, we often checked in on him. When we found the front door open, we walked in to see who was there and were met by Teresa. At first, we didn't recognize her. She looked so different that we thought an old woman we didn't know was speaking to us. The once well-groomed Teresa was unrecognizable now, looking worn out. Teresa tried to apologize and seek forgiveness for what she had done in the past, but all I could do was give her a bitter look, thinking it was too convenient for her to ask for forgiveness now. Eric must have been quite shocked to see her, yet he seemed somewhat moved by the return of the woman he once loved. While he was trying to figure out how to ask her to leave, Adam, standing next to him, suddenly clutched his mouth and crouched down. Remembering Teresa's affair in our room, he couldn't hold it in and vomited right there. In a panic, Eric and I rushed to get a trash can and water, and we heard Adam's cries of rejection toward Teresa from behind his back. Feeling sorry for Adam and unsure how to handle the situation, it was Eric who took action. He looked Teresa straight in the eyes and firmly told her, "There is no chance of reconciliation. Leave," he said, sending Teresa away with strong words. Teresa seemed deeply affected by her own son's rejection, especially seeing how sick it made him. Without saying another word, she stumbled out the front door and left. Since that incident, Teresa has kept her distance from Eric, and there has been no contact from either Dad or Teresa. It seems our ties with them have been completely severed. Adam was under the weather for a few days, but he has since recovered, and together we are focused on building a warm and loving home. Mom has shown incredible strength. She quickly found work, made new friends, and is moving on from Dad to enjoy her life. She's planning to rent an apartment for herself once she has saved enough, and I hope she chooses one close to her home. As for Eric, he seems to have brightened up a bit after adopting a stray cat that wandered into his yard. Taking in that one cat has led to 2 more cats gathering at his place, and now it's known in the neighborhood as a popular hangout for cats. The ordeal caused by Dad and Teresa involved the whole family in a tough situation, but those of us who remain have strengthened our bonds and are doing our best to move forward.
I'm Lila. My life was straightforward, just work and home. I worked as a web designer, and my days were filled with coding, designing, and client meetings, all from the comfort of my home. I was good at what I did, and it showed in my bank balance. It wasn't always like this. A year ago, my life was a mess after a horrible breakup. I had sworn off relationships, focusing only on work. But then, I met Ethan at a friend's party. Ethan came up to me with a simple, "Hi, I'm Ethan. You're Lila, right?" His voice was calm and steady, no airs, no pretense. "Yes, that's me," I replied, taking in his casual attire and easygoing smile. We talked about everything that evening, from movies to our hobbies. He mentioned he worked in sales and seemed to enjoy his job. "You must love what you do," he commented after I explained my work. "I do," I smiled. "It's more than just a job for me." He nodded, and we continued chatting for what felt like hours. By the end of the evening, we had exchanged numbers. It wasn't long before our casual chats turned into dates, and our dates turned into serious discussions about our future together. Ethan was different from the men I'd known. He was kind, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my life. I remember our third date distinctly. We were sitting in a small cafe, and he handed me a bouquet of flowers. "For you," he said simply. "Oh, Ethan, they're lovely," I replied, taken aback by the gesture. "I thought they'd make you smile," he grinned. We dated for a few months, and everything felt perfect. So when Ethan proposed, I didn't hesitate. We had a simple wedding and moved in together. My house, spacious and filled with the memories of my single life, now echoed with our shared laughter. However, things took a turn when Ethan came home one day looking distressed. "I lost my job, Lila," he began, avoiding my gaze. I was stunned, but tried to be understanding. "It's okay, Ethan. We'll manage. You'll find another job soon." He looked relieved. "Thank you for understanding. I promise I'll make this right." I believed him. Truly I did. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, with Ethan not working and his job interviews leading nowhere, my patience began to wear thin. As the days went by, my trust in Ethan waned, replaced by an unsettling anxiety. Our financial situation was still stable thanks to my job, but Ethan's attitude towards employment became increasingly lackadaisical. One evening, I overheard him talking on the phone. "Yes, Mom, I'm taking care of everything. Lila's just doing her little web designing thing, but I'm handling the big stuff." That conversation irked me. Was he implying that he was the primary earner? A week later, his sister Elsie dropped by for a visit. She and I never really got along. Our beliefs and lifestyles were polar opposites. She had chosen a life completely centered around her home and husband, a choice I respected but couldn't understand. The moment she walked in, she started inspecting the place. "Lila, don't you ever dust around here?" she commented, running her finger along a shelf. "We've both been busy, Elsie," I said, trying to remain calm. She smirked. "Well, maybe if you focused less on work and more on your home." "Elsie, Lila's doing a lot, okay? You don't need to come here and criticize." Ethan quickly interjected, trying to mediate. Elsie raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I know you're taking care of everything, Ethan. I just feel bad you married someone who can't even keep a house tidy." I was fuming. "Elsie, it's not just my job to keep the house clean. Ethan lives here too." Ethan glanced at me, then at his sister, a silent plea in his eyes. "Let's not discuss this here," he said softly. Elsie smirked. Of course, wouldn't want to make things uncomfortable. But remember, Ethan, a man's role is to provide. I was left seething as Elsie sauntered out, leaving a trail of tension in her wake. Later that evening, I tried talking to Ethan. "Why does Elsie think you're the main provider? Why is she under the impression that I'm just sitting around doing nothing?" Ethan looked uncomfortable. "Look, Lila, I might have mentioned to her that I'm handling a lot of things. I didn't want her or Mom thinking less of me because I'm not working." That doesn't give you the right to belittle my contribution, Ethan. We're supposed to be a team, I replied, frustration evident in my voice. Ethan sighed. I'm sorry, Lila. I'll clear things up with Elsie and Mom. Please give me some time. The days that followed were full of tension. Every morning, as I settled into my home office, the same nagging thought kept bothering me. Was Ethan being truthful? How much more was he keeping from me? It was one evening, as I sat down to pay some bills, that I noticed something off. A hefty amount had been transferred monthly from our joint account to an unfamiliar one. Curiosity piqued, I decided to dig deeper. I approached Ethan as he lounged on the couch. Hey, I noticed some transfers from our account. Do you know anything about it? Ethan looked up, startled. Oh, yeah, that's just some money I've been sending to Mom to help her out. I raised an eyebrow. Help her out? With what? And why didn't you tell me? He hesitated. Well, she has some expenses, and since I'm not working, I thought I'd support her with our savings. I was taken aback. Ethan, that's our money. We should be discussing these things together. It's a considerable amount. Ethan looked away. I didn't think it was a big deal, Lila. She's family. Frustration bubbled up. But so am I. Why didn't you talk to me about this? I didn't want you to worry, he muttered. My voice began to tremble with anger. Ethan, keeping secrets, especially about money, isn't right. We made a commitment to each other. This isn't how it's supposed to work. He sighed. I know, Lila, I didn't want to feel useless. I wanted to at least do something for my family since I can't for ours right now. I looked at him, tears in my eyes. But you are doing something. You're sharing your life with me. We need trust and transparency. Without that, what do we have? Ethan lowered his gaze. I'm sorry, Lila. I messed up. I took a deep breath. We need to fix this, Ethan, starting with being honest about everything. He nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. I promise, no more secrets. But as the night wore on and I lay in bed, I couldn't shake off the feeling of betrayal. In the wake of our last conversation, things felt even more strained between Ethan and me. Though he promised transparency, my own curiosity led me on a path to uncover the depth of his deception. One evening, as Ethan went out under the guise of another job seminar, I decided to do a little detective work. Going through our financial statements, I traced back every transaction to his mother's account. The sums were large, far more than one would need for general assistance. I picked up my phone and called my friend Jane, who worked at a bank. Hey, Jane, I need a favor, I began, hesitating. Can you help me look into an account? I think something's off. There was a pause on the other line before Jane replied, Lila, you know that's not exactly legal. I know, but I'm desperate, I admitted. I promise, I won't get you in trouble. After hearing my story, Jane hesitated for a moment and then said, Okay, send me the account number. I'll see what I can do. A day later, she called me back with information that confirmed my suspicions. Lila, Jane began, her voice low, the money Ethan's sending to his mother? It's not just sitting there. It's being funneled into an investment account, and the amounts are substantial. My heart sank. Investment account? Yes, and the worst part is, it's under both his mother's and his name. I was speechless. Not only was he giving away our savings, but he was also making investments without informing me. Jane, thank you, I managed, my voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Lila, she replied. I sat in our living room, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. How could he? When Ethan returned later that evening, I confronted him, papers scattered all over our coffee table. Ethan, we need to talk. He took one look at the bank statements and paled. Lila? Why, Ethan, why did you lie to me? I demanded. Ethan swallowed hard. Mom convinced me it was a good investment. She said we'd double our money in no time. I thought I was doing it for us. But it's our money, Ethan, I exclaimed. You can't make decisions like this on your own. We're supposed to be partners. He sat down, defeated. I know. I messed up. I thought I could surprise you, show you I was contributing. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. By lying? By betraying my trust? Ethan looked away, guilt evident in his eyes. I'm sorry, Lila. I should have talked to you. The truth was out, but the damage was done. Could our relationship withstand the strain of so many lies? The atmosphere in the house was as cold and quiet as a winter morning. After uncovering Ethan's deceit, I was determined to keep my composure, but I found myself rattled whenever I remembered the mistruths. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed to be avoiding the topic entirely. Just as I sat down at my computer, the front door burst open. Before I could react, Lydia, Ethan's mother, and Elsie stormed into the living room. You shameless woman! Lydia's voice cut through the air. All you do is sit on your behind and suck the life out of my son. Elsie chimed in with a smirk. Always knew you were a leech, just waiting to latch on to someone better off. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts before replying. I'm the one working and earning here. Ethan hasn't been for months. Ethan stood off to the side, his eyes darting between us. I hoped, expected that he would say something, defend me. But he remained silent. Lydia, her face red with rage, took a step forward. You expect us to believe that? My son has been the one supporting this family. You've just been enjoying his hard work. Elsie nodded in agreement. Honestly, I don't know what he saw in you. You're just a lazy housewife, living off someone else's money. Their words were like salt on an open wound. But more painful than their false accusations was Ethan's silence. He just stood there, watching the scene unfold without uttering a word in my defense. Taking a deep breath, I stood tall and looked straight into Lydia's eyes. All I ask is for the money Ethan transferred to you, returned. It's rightfully ours, not just his. Lydia's face twisted in rage. How dare you? That's my son's money, and I'll decide what to do with it. Despite the fury in her eyes, I didn't waver. It's our money, Lydia. Earned by me, not him. She stared at me for a moment, the room silent except for our heavy breathing. Then, with a huff, she turned on her heel, Elsie following close behind. This isn't over, Lydia spat as she stormed out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, leaving a lingering echo. I turned to Ethan, waiting for him to say something, anything. But he just looked down, avoiding my gaze. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on me. Not only was there deceit about money, but I was also fighting a battle with his family on my own. His silence hurt more than any deceit ever could. A few days after the confrontation, I sat in my home office, distracted by everything that had occurred. The tranquility of my workspace, usually a haven for creativity, now felt stifling. Taking a sip from my coffee, I pondered on how to reclaim my dignity and pride. The first step was clear. I accessed my online bank, scrutinizing every transaction, noting down each suspicious transfer. The amount Ethan had funneled to his mother was staggering. Money I had earned with sweat and sleepless nights, taken without my knowledge. A message pinged on my computer. It was from Lucy, a friend since college, and also a brilliant lawyer. I had confided in her about the whole situation, and she was eager to help. Hey, I've looked into your situation. Let's meet for lunch? Her message read. We met at a quiet bistro, away from prying eyes. So, Lucy began, stirring her iced tea. I've been doing some digging, and I think we have a solid case here. It's about time we put Ethan and his family in their place. I nodded, taking a deep breath. I just want what's rightfully mine, Lucy. I can't let them get away with this. Lucy's eyes gleamed with determination. Trust me, they won't. Weeks turned into a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings, and strategy sessions. Lucy and I, along with a team she'd put together, found evidence not only of Ethan's deceit, but also questionable transactions involving Lydia's accounts. It was a spiderweb of lies and deceit, with Ethan and Lydia at its center. One evening, after another exhaustive session, Lucy looked at me and said, "It's time. Let's serve them the papers." The next morning, Lucy and I drove to Lydia's place. Ethan's car was parked outside. Perfect. We rang the bell, and Elsie answered, her face a mask of fake surprise. "Oh, it's you," she sneered. "We're not here for games," I said coldly. "Is Ethan here?" Before Elsie could reply, Ethan emerged from the living room. His confident smirk vanished as Lucy handed him an envelope. "You're being sued," she said crisply. "For fraud and theft. I'd advise you to get a lawyer." His face paled. "This is ridiculous," he exclaimed. "No, what's ridiculous is you stealing from your wife and lying about it," I retorted. Lydia appeared at the door, her eyes scanning the scene. "What's going on here?" "You might want to read this too," Lucy said, handing her another envelope. As Lydia read the documents, her face went from smug to horrified. "You can't do this." I stood tall, all the pain and humiliation fueling my resolve. "I can, and I am. See you in court." Walking away from that house, with Lucy by my side, I felt a weight lifted. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about standing up for myself when others tried to push me down. It was about reclaiming my power, and it was served cold. As the days drew closer to our court date, I braced myself for the inevitable backlash. I knew Lydia and Ethan wouldn't go down without a fight. And while I was emotionally ready, I didn't expect them to bring the battle right to my doorstep. It was a chilly evening when my doorbell rang. Peering through the peephole, I saw them, Lydia, Elsie, and Ethan, their faces a cocktail of anger and determination. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. "Thought you'd ambush us with that lawsuit, did you?" Lydia spat out, taking a step inside. Ethan and Elsie trailed behind her, blocking the exit. "Calm down, Lydia. This isn't a good look for you," I replied evenly. "You think you can just humiliate us in public? Drag our name through the mud?" Elsie snapped, her voice dripping with contempt. "It's simple," I replied coolly. "Return the money, and this ends." Ethan, who had been silent till now, looked at me with a mix of frustration and sadness. "Is this how you want things to end? By suing your own family?" "Family?" I echoed, my voice icy. "A family doesn't steal from each other. A family doesn't lie and degrade one another." He sighed. "I made a mistake, but taking us to court? That's extreme." "It's justice," I responded, "and I'm not dropping the case." Lydia, crimson with rage, glared at me. "We won't let you tarnish our reputation. You're going to regret this." "Is that a threat?" I countered. "Everything I've done is legal. Can you say the same?" "Enough!" Ethan shouted. "This is getting us nowhere." I fixed him with a steely gaze. "You're right. It's clear where we all stand. Now, I suggest you leave." Elsie sneered. "You may have gotten the upper hand now, but remember, the courts haven't decided anything yet." "We'll see," I replied confidently. As they left, the tension in the room was palpable, but I stood my ground. They had come to intimidate, to make me doubt my course, but it had the opposite effect. Their visit only solidified my decision. There was no turning back now, and whatever the outcome, I was ready. The day of the court hearing arrived quicker than I anticipated. As I entered the building, my heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, echoing the resolute beat of my heart. There was a thrum of anticipation in the air, and I could feel eyes on me, but I remained focused, my gaze unwavering. Sitting across the room, Lydia, Elsie, and Ethan whispered among themselves, casting furtive glances in my direction. Ethan looked especially worn out, his earlier confidence replaced by clear anxiety. Lydia, on the other hand, wore a mask of defiance, while Elsie's face was set in a frown, her eyes hard and calculating. The room fell silent as the judge entered, taking her place at the bench. "We are gathered here today to discuss the matter of financial fraud and theft," she began. "Present your case." My lawyer stepped forward, presenting the evidence of the unauthorized transfers and Ethan's deception. The paper trail was undeniable, every detail meticulously recorded. The judge frequently glanced up from the documents, looking first at Ethan and then at me. Ethan's lawyer made a valiant attempt to argue that the money was gifted willingly, but the evidence against them was insurmountable. When Lydia was called to the stand, her arrogance was palpable. "That money was for my son," she declared. "It was only right that he should have it." "But it wasn't yours to take," I replied calmly when it was my turn to speak. "And it wasn't yours to keep," Lydia snapped, pointing a shaking finger at me. The judge interjected, "This isn't about family dynamics. This is about the law, and the law is clear on this matter." Hours seemed to stretch on as the proceedings continued. When the final verdict was read, vindication surged through me. Ethan was ordered to return every cent he had taken, and additional punitive damages were awarded to me for the deceit and emotional trauma. After the hearing, as I stepped out into the crisp air, I felt lighter than I had in months. This was more than just a legal victory. It was my emancipation from the shackles of deception, disrespect, and manipulation. Ethan approached, his face pale. "I'm sorry," he murmured, not meeting my eyes. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment I saw the man I had fallen in love with. But that image was quickly replaced by the reality of who he had become. "It's too late for sorry," I replied. As I walked away, I felt a sense of finality. It was the end of a painful chapter in my life, but it was also the beginning of a new one where I was in control, where I was free. That evening, as I sat in my home, the silence was soothing. There were no more whispers, no more deceit, no more games. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my peace. And as the sun set, casting a warm golden hue across the room, I knew that tomorrow would be a new day, full of promise and endless possibilities.
You can't match the taste I bring to the food, isn't it right, Jack? Alicia, please don't mind me saying that you look a little off in front of my handsome brother. He would have made a better couple with my friend Emily. She's so gorgeous, and even younger than him, you know. Nonetheless, he chose you over her, so prove to be a better wife, okay? The thought of having a conversation with her gave me chills, but I had to endure her on important occasions, such as my husband's birthday and Thanksgiving dinner, because she was important to my husband. Jack felt that he owed her love and care for everything she did for him as a child. It was just a matter of a few hours, so I didn't mind. Besides, Jack would always intervene to protect me and ensure not to leave me alone with Carol, so it was fine. Fast forward to the day when my husband told me that Carol is going to move in with us with her family. I was shocked. The lady whom I can't endure for a few hours is going to stay with me? That was too much of Carol for me. But why? What happened? I don't know the complete details. She called me in the afternoon and informed me that she would be moving in with us for some time. For how long? I don't know that. I asked her for the details, and she said that she would let us know everything after coming over. She also mentioned that she would need a bigger bedroom for her, as Ben needs a larger bed to sleep in. The mattress in the guest room isn't comfortable for Ben. Ben is my sister-in-law's son, and is just like his mother. Then what do we do now? Well, I think we need to set up the guest room for ourselves. Jack, let's address the elephant in the room. You know how cranky your sister is. It is insufferable to spend a few hours with her. How can I live with her in the same house? Hey, relax. Why are you stressing so much over it? She would be here for a weekend. It's been a long time since we've spent such a good amount of time together with each other, so you know she would be hoping to spend time with us. Even if it was just a weekend, it was difficult for me to tolerate her. Honey, I know she's a little possessive about me, and sometimes she crosses her line, but you know I owe her this much for all the love and care. I'm her only family as she is to me. Dad doesn't even bother to check on us. I agreed to let Carol have the bedroom while I shifted our belongings to the guest room. Carol arrived with her son Ben and her husband Henry. To my horror, they arrived with large suitcases, which meant that they were going to be there for a longer time than we expected. After the initial pleasantries were done, Carol started with her unusual requests. Thea, is the bedroom ready? We're tired from the journey. We need to rest. Also, please unpack my suitcase and put our clothes in the closet. Jack, shift the TV to the bedroom. My son can't sleep without the TV. Jack intervened. Hey, Carol, calm down. Why do you want so much hassle and shuffling for a couple of days? Couple of days? Oh, I think I didn't tell you the plan. Our house is undergoing renovation. It would take 6 months to complete, so we are here for the next 6 months. Yay! Jack and I glared at each other with a mutual feeling of shock. She continued, although Henry asked us to shift with his parents, you know how daunting it is to live with in-laws. Besides, this could be an opportunity for us to spend time together. Isn't it exciting? 6 months. That was too much of Carol for me. Jack understood that I wasn't taking this well. Jack went on to help Carol and her family settle in the bedroom, and later came to the guest room where I was waiting for him impatiently. Jack, what the hell? 6 months? Seriously? I know, calm down, sweetie. Even I wasn't aware of this. You need to figure this out. I definitely can't stay with her for 6 months. Why can't she just move in with her in-laws or take any temporary accommodation? Babe, I know she's difficult, but she's still my sister. I'm her only family. I can't shoo her away when she needs me. So, you want me to put up with her for 6 long months? Honey, I think you need to give her some time to settle down. She has never spent enough time with you. She doesn't know you well. I'm sure once she understands how lovely and caring you are, she'll love you as she loves me. Trust me, she's not as evil as you think. She's just too possessive of me. So let's just give her a chance, okay? Who knows, you might get along with her. Although I wasn't convinced, I thought of giving it a shot. Okay. The next few days were a nightmare for me. I tried my best to accommodate all of Carol's unreasonable requests, like cooking exotic meals, taking Ben for a walk, and putting him to sleep. She didn't help with any of the household work. Her husband Henry was kinder and empathetic towards me. Alicia, we're so sorry to trouble you. Is there anything I can help you with? I see that you are working very hard to make us feel comfortable. Oh, come on, Henry. I don't think Alicia needs any help. It's a matter of a few months. She can manage on her own. We're guests, and she could do all of these as a host. You're just being too modest. After a few days, Henry decided to stay with his parents instead because it was closer to his house and the office, and he could supervise the renovation work. I realized that after Henry left, Carol and Ben became monsters. Carol upgraded her food menu, and her requests turned into orders. Alicia, it's been a while since I had turkey. Can you have that for dinner today? I've got a sweet tooth. Would you make a pineapple pie today? I'm craving a lobster bisque. Add that for today's dinner. I bit my tongue and nodded. Jack helped as much as he could after his office, but Carol would ask him to spend time with her instead. "Jack, can't you spare the evening for your sister? Let's play tennis on the lawn like we did when we were kids." Carol lounged on the sofa, gorging on the meals served by me, and spent the evenings playing tennis and board games with Jack, while I spent my days relentlessly cooking meals for them, cleaning the house, and serving them like a slave. On top of that, Ben was a headache. He was one of those pampered lads who wanted everything in the world. Within a week of their stay, he broke the TV remote, damaged the wall clock, tore away the houseplants, and cracked several kitchen items. Every time he damaged anything, Carol would sigh and say, "Ben, you're just getting naughtier, aren't you? Alicia, you know how kids are. I'm sure you'll go through this pain once you have one." I thought to myself that if my kid did any of this, I'd ensure to teach him such a lesson that he wouldn't dare repeat his misdemeanor. I was exhausted. A week passed, but Carol just didn't seem to back off. Her wish list stretched day by day, and the genie inside me was done fulfilling them. I reached the boiling point when she handed over a menu card to me with a list of food that needed to be prepared for her and her family. I know it might sound odd to you, but our food choices are very different. I know you and Jack like oil-free, low-carb diets, but I prefer greasy and spicy foods, and for Ben, we need high-carb and protein food. So please prepare separate food for me and Ben. To ease your work, here's the food menu for the week. I rolled my eyes and, instead of going to the kitchen, which had been my workstation for a week, I locked myself in my room, waiting for Jack to come back home. All this while, Carol and Ben knocked on the door several times with their orders, like a caramel coffee for Carol and spaghetti for Ben, but I ignored them. I unlocked the door when Jack came in the evening. Carol had already complained to him of my misbehavior, that I locked myself in the room and didn't serve them coffee and evening snacks. "What's up, babe? Carol said that you locked yourself in the room and didn't answer them when they knocked." "Yes, I did that. See this." I threw the menu card towards him. He saw the list and was fuming with anger. Jack was the kind of person who wanted to handle things subtly, so instead of storming out of the room and unleashing his anger, he told me, "Well, in that case, let's do one thing. You shift to your parents' house for some time." "Seriously, Jack? You want me to shift to my parents' house so that your sister can have a more comfortable stay in this house? Babe, once you're gone, how do you think she would have a comfortable stay? Who will cook for her? Who will clean for her?" I took a deep breath and agreed. Jack helped me pack my belongings, and as we were leaving the house, Carol came running in panic. "Hey, where are you guys going?" "Nothing, sis. Alicia is tired and she's not feeling well, so I'm going to drop her at her parents' house." "Well, she can rest here. I can help her in the kitchen for a few days. Why do you want to bother her parents?" "That's fine. She can rest there comfortably." "Oh, wait. For how long is she going to stay there?" "She'll stay there until she gets better. But don't worry. I'll be back in an hour after dropping her. We'll have dinner together." "But Alicia hasn't prepared any dinner. Ben and I haven't eaten anything since this afternoon." "Oh, come on, Carol. You can prepare dinner by the time I'm back. You're a great cook, aren't you? Let's have Chinese tonight." Carol was disgruntled as we left. She just lost a free cook. Jack told me that Carol was angry when he went back home. For the next few days, Carol let Ben vandalize the house to get back at me. Every time Ben broke something, she would click a picture and send it to me over notes. "Ben broke your flower vase. Sorry." "Ben broke your wall paintings. Sorry." "Ben broke your table lamp again." I didn't respond. Instead, I would just forward the message to Jack. He was losing his patience. He tried to confront Carol, but she brushed it off, saying, "Oh, Jack, Ben is a naughty little kid. Remember how naughty you were when we visited Uncle Peter on his birthday? You broke his $5,000 Buddha statue, which he bought from his India trip." "It was an accident. Uncle Peter's son pushed me on the statue. Ben is doing this deliberately. You should stop him." They argued over this, but Ben didn't back off. He continued to create a ruckus in the house. Jack was losing all the respect and affection he had for his dear sister. After a few days, I got a notification that my ATM card had been blocked because the wrong PIN was entered too many times. Guess what? It wasn't me who was using the card. I had left the card at home. I forgot to bring it with me. It was a no-brainer that Carol was the one who tried to tamper with my card. Thanks to the efficient banking system, she couldn't lift a penny from my accounts. When I was just sighing in relief, I realized that the wallet had my debit as well as my credit card. After a failed attempt on the debit card, she might try her hands on my credit card, which doesn't need a PIN. One can just pay with a tap. I started shivering in panic. I hurriedly tried to call the bank and block my credit card. But by then, I got a notification that $10,000 had been withdrawn from my credit card, which was the credit limit of my card. I immediately called the bank and reported the transaction, stating the card was lost. I lost my patience and decided to put an end to Carol's perversity. I headed towards my home and on my way called Jack to inform him about everything. I also told him I was heading home to confront Carol and put an end to everything. He asked me to wait for him, but I didn't listen. I barged into my house, which was a hovel. It was vandalized by Ben. The living space was littered with cushions, pillows, broken pieces of toys, and whatnot. The dinner table was stocked with cutlery, half-eaten fruits, and boxes of jam and juices. Carol was lying on the couch, playing with her monster son. "Carol, what the hell is this? A house or a pigsty? Is this how you kept your own house? How dare you talk to me like this? If you were so concerned about your house, why did you leave? Forget that. Did you tamper with my cards? I left my cards at home. Someone has tried to access my ATM card and has also withdrawn $10,000 from my credit card. Was that you? Are you alleging that I've stolen your money? You think I'm a thief? I'm going to call up Jack right now and tell him about your outrageous allegation. He'll never forgive you for talking to me in this manner. You'll see how he's going to divorce you for misbehaving with me." I kept staring at her foolishness. She called up Jack, who didn't answer her call. After a few minutes, Jack entered, and Carol rushed toward him and hugged him. "Jack, thank God you're here. Your wife is accusing me of tampering with her cards. She's harassing me and my son. Chase her out of this house and your life. She is a devil. She's wrong. You didn't tamper with her cards. You stole her cards and the money. I have had enough of you. You are a narcissist. You're no longer the sister who nursed me as a kid. You've become a demon." Carol was frozen by this, and so was I. Jack was never this loud, but from his words, it was evident that Carol had pushed all his buttons. "Jack, have you lost your senses? You talk to your sister like this? I'm the one who raised you. I nursed you when you were ill. I took care of you. I was the one to stand with you when you had no one." "Enough of counting favors, Carol. If you were there for me, I too stood by you for all these years. But enough is enough. You tormented my wife, let your son vandalize the house, and now you're stealing money. You've stooped so low to torture Alicia. Do you realize that I'm also suffering because of this?" Carol was taken aback by Jack's confrontation. She started sobbing to escape the ordeal. "Well, In that case, I'll leave this place immediately. By all means, but before that, give back the cards. She turned monstrous. I don't have any cards. Your treacherous wife has manipulated you against me. I knew she was a lousy woman the moment I saw her on the wedding day, but it was too late to stop you. You'll regret it. You'll regret it badly. Enough. Cut the crap. Give me my card and the $10,000 you've withdrawn from the credit card, or else I'll call the police on you. For the last time, I don't have the cards. But then we heard a crackling sound. Ben was playing with the cards, breaking them into pieces. That sight changed everything. That's it. I've tolerated you enough. Leave my house right away. I'm breaking all ties with you. I don't want to see your face ever again. Jack, don't do this, please. You're my only family. You know that you can't abandon me. Jack called up Henry and told him everything. Henry wasn't aware of all this. He was busy juggling his work and overseeing his house renovation. He was shocked to hear all this. Henry admitted that Carol was a possessive person and sometimes crosses her lane. He confessed that he was also having a difficult time dealing with Carol. She is so insecure that she doesn't let Henry meet his female friends and colleagues. She also gets cranky when Henry's parents and siblings visit him. Henry rushed down to our house and apologized to Jack and me. He offered to compensate for the damage caused by Ben, but Jack refused. Carol was sulking and wasn't ready to leave, but Henry dragged her out of the house. I breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, I was able to get rid of Carol. I no longer have to worry about her taunts and humiliations at family gatherings. I doubt if she would be a part of any important occasions, because this incident became hot gossip amongst the extended family, and everyone was laughing at how justice was served to Carol. She had to spend the remaining months at her in-laws' place, where her mother-in-law was giving her a tough time. Henry is turning a blind eye to it, as he wants Carol to have a taste of her own medicine. I was happy that Jack finally saw Carol's true colors.
If you're lecturing me, you must be rather competent at your job, right? I want to watch you speak with this old man on the phone. He's French, by the way. I had recently been rehired as a part-time employee after retiring. Taking directions from someone like me appears to make him unhappy. I was asked to bargain in French by Ryan, the recent hire who takes great pride in his Harvard degree. Go ahead and speak with him, old man. I thought you were being arrogant, didn't you? What's wrong? I will speak. Oh, I got a slight shove on the shoulder from Ryan. I was getting really irritated. Is that correct? I inhaled deeply before picking up the phone. Ryan's face went white when he saw what I did. William is my name. After years of arduous labor, I recently retired this year at the age of 65. During my retirement farewell tour, I was requested to stay with the company on several occasions. I was pleased that my efforts had been acknowledged. I therefore made the decision to rejoin a sizable, reputable trading organization where I had ties after talking it over with my wife. I was anxious to demonstrate that I still had what it took, since I never imagined that I would be able to find another work at 65. But my wife and I had also organized a trip overseas. You know, you don't need to exert yourself too much. You truly enjoy what you do, don't you? What are you discussing? Of course, I value you more than my job. However, if you wanted to, are you certain you could still work a full-time job? No, everything is all right. I've already put forth enough effort. Let the younger generation take the initiative. My wife was aware of my enthusiasm for my work and how much I genuinely enjoyed it. But I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to travel with you. Since our honeymoon, this would be our first time traveling alone. In order to have a flexible schedule, I asked to be employed as a part-time employee during my interview. William, we would be overjoyed to have you, they added. The business was more than willing to comply with my request. I was lucky enough to begin working part-time at this new company because they promised to modify my schedule as needed. The task was made easier by the fact that I knew a few faces from past interactions. Naturally, I had a lot of new information to learn, but I quickly caught up by using my experience to make up for my advanced age. People around me valued my hard work, just as they did before I retired. As expected, William, you're incredibly fast. I'm getting older, though. I used to learn things much more quickly in the past. Ask me anything if you don't understand. I'm also becoming rather proficient at this profession. The familiar staff welcomed me even though, in terms of my start date, I was officially the junior. Given my prior work expertise, a few of them even approached me with inquiries when they were stuck. I didn't hesitate to communicate what I knew. It was satisfying to know that my experience may still benefit others, despite the fact that I am now an elderly man. Work is a lot of fun. I'm happy to have found employment in this field once more. I was leading a really happy life. Following a month-long training program, it was time for the new hires to be assigned to their departments. Of course, there was also a new hire in our department. In the midst of the office, we were all called together. This time of year is upon us once more. Please assist the new member who is joining us if they require assistance. The new employee was urged to introduce themselves by the department supervisor, who pushed them ahead. In front of everyone, the newcomer took a stand. He had a smart suit and was fairly attractive. He parted his lips to say something. Hey, does he use English? Incredulously, everyone in the department cocked their heads. Suddenly, the new guy was speaking in English, although it was difficult to understand what he was saying. I apologize for it. I've spent a lot of time at Harvard. Anyway, it's good to meet everyone. Ryan is my name. I'm excited to collaborate with you. Ryan, the newcomer, lowered his head. Everyone cheered courteously, even though they were surprised that he was speaking English. Ryan smiled smugly, seeming as though he mistook their shocked looks. I apologize for that. Sometimes I just forget to speak English because I'm so accustomed to it. When I was a Harvard student, 5 more minutes of Ryan talking about himself. He made sure everyone knew how outstanding his English was by mentioning multiple times that he was a Harvard graduate. So, yeah, it's time to return to work. Let's conclude with the introductions. All right, Ryan, I'm excited to work with you. Thank you indeed. I'm excited to collaborate with you as well. The boss, Mark, interrupted him and told everyone to return to work. Ryan smiled brightly in response. Since then, Ryan has been a constant topic of discussion in the department. He tried to use English in his conversations every day. Although his excitement was valued, it got to the point where people had to put their job on hold in order to deal with him, which left them grinning awkwardly. As we collaborated, we discovered that Ryan's supposedly fluent English was actually very difficult to comprehend. Ryan would remark, "Well, you know, it just comes out naturally because I only spoke English while I was at Harvard." However, his English was hard to understand, even for native English speakers, and at times we couldn't understand a word he was saying. But he boasted so much that nobody was willing to tell him it out loud. We simply nodded in agreement to continue the conversation even when we couldn't understand what he was saying. Then Ryan came up to me one day. He posed a question, but I tilted my head in perplexity, unable to understand what he was saying. "Could you say that again?" I said. Ryan spoke again, but his unintelligible pace and pronunciation made it impossible to follow. School was the only word I could make out. I chose to ask him for a favor, though, because I didn't think I could understand even if he repeated it in English. "Would you mind saying it in Japanese?" Ryan clicked his tongue irritably at my attempt at a courteous grin. "Hey, you're not understanding." "English? Why is this guy working here when he doesn't even speak English? Everyone working for this company is expected to speak English fluently." Ryan's tone was obviously sarcastic, you know. At that moment, nobody else was present. Ryan gave me a quick smack on the shoulder, knowing this. Hi, elderly gentleman. I wanted to know where you attended college. English is taught even in Japanese universities, correct? Actually, though, I didn't attend college. I only received my middle school diploma. How come? In middle school, you're not telling the truth. How did you join this organization? Ryan started laughing so hard that tears started to form in his eyes. Oh, hurry up. Really? Is this business so in need of employees that it is employing an elderly man who has only completed middle school and is unable to communicate in English? Oh, I see. I take that you were employed as a janitor. Ryan strolled past me, laughing as though he had no more use for me. Ryan's attitude toward me had a significant change after that day. As we passed each other, he would murmur something in English and snicker behind my back. His tone made it obvious that he was making fun of me, even though I was still unable to grasp his English. His conduct began to worsen once he somehow discovered out I was working part-time. However, throughout my many years of employment, I had already met numerous people who were similar to Ryan. I kept a mature demeanor and tried not to let it get to me too much. He will most likely become bored and quit eventually, so long as it doesn't interfere with my work. In light of that, I carried on enjoying my job as normal, and, when returning home, spending time with my wife. Even if Ryan's presence made things a little more difficult, I was still leading a happy life. William said, "Oh, David, what's up?" A few days later. "I want you to take care of things. Will you look at this for me?" I was given some paperwork by the department manager, David. Looking through them, I saw that they were regarding a contract with St Corporation, a big American firm. With locations across the world, St Corporation is among the biggest corporations in the world. I was well acquainted with them. I figured you'd be the best guy for this because they have so many branches. Are you certain that giving someone who works part-time such a large job is acceptable? Oh, William, hurry up. I have faith in you. Oh, Ryan, by the way. David called out to Ryan, "Hey, Ryan." Ryan answered right away, but he scowled a little when he saw me. As David went on, "What is it, David?" His scowl changed to one of perplexity and rage. "Ryan, you'll be helping William because you speak English well. Learn from him and observe his methods." How come? Am I meant to help William? As a helper. Yes, keep an eye out since I may give you similar assignments in the future. I'm depending on you, William. I got it. David left the department with a smile on his face. To make copies of the documents, I went to the printer. I heard Ryan complaining behind me, "Why must I? Why is this elderly man involved?" It was impossible for me not to sigh deeply. I turned to Ryan and scolded him calmly but firmly, looking him in the eye. Work is work, whether you like it or not. Together, let's accomplish this. You may be given this on your own one day, as David mentioned, so listen carefully. The documents are here. I'll go reserve a conference room because we're about to begin our meeting. Hold on there. Ryan appeared unhappy. He took the copies from me without a word, and I left to make the lodging reservation. I went to the archives to locate more items after securing the space and messaging Ryan. Ryan had already left when I brought the paperwork back to the department. My coworkers claimed that he had already made his way to the meeting room. I also picked up my laptop and went inside the room. You're running late. I've been holding out. As soon as I opened the door, Ryan mumbled. I became irritated since his tone was very different from when David was present. He was still young, though, and I told myself that he must have been quite frustrated with me. I handed Ryan the extra documents and opened my laptop on the desk. I wanted to know more details. Since we're working with a big business, the typical Japanese techniques might not be effective. Getting as much information as you can is crucial. Document research is essential. I gave the materials to him. These and these are here. Be sure to read them through. He grabbed the papers out of my grasp and nearly pulled them out. Why must I help this elderly man? He's not even fluent in English. Are you even familiar with that laptop? Do you want me to demonstrate keyboard usage for you? I'm perfectly capable of using it. I made every effort to suppress my annoyance by clenching and squeezing my fist tightly. Since he's still young, it was unavoidable. He will inevitably make mistakes at work as well, and rebellion is to be expected. I thought Ryan would work hard this time around because I had saw him approach his work with a serious mindset in the past. All that mattered was that he could successfully finish this large assignment. In light of that, I forced myself not to get upset at what Ryan had said. We began talking about how to move forward with the discussions based on the information we had once he had completed reading the documents. We should concentrate on promoting this since this company is excellent in this field and they appear to be searching for it at the moment. No, this is superior. I would do it this way if it were up to me. However, that strategy might lead to issues that haven't even arisen yet. Furthermore, there wouldn't be much of a loss. All right? What topic are you discussing? The other business might sustain large losses even if ours are little. Thus, we ought to. Are you serious? That would just result in less profit and needless labor. Ryan resisted all of my recommendations. During our conversation, he never once nodded in agreement. I listened to his thoughts, trying to remain composed, because I thought he could have a better suggestion. However, all of his recommendations were flawed. His suggestions were all aimed at increasing our business's earnings without taking the rival company's response into account. Nothing was determined for a while, and Ryan grew more and more angry at me for not supporting his ideas. What a horrible plan. The old man with little education really has no use for anything he thinks about. You're such a moron. You still have me as your senior. Don't use such language while we're working, but you only work part-time, right? Is a part-time employee considered a senior? Being part-time doesn't matter at this moment because I work full-time. Do things right because it's the job. Yeah. As we prepared the documentation to present to David, we proceeded to type up the strategy on the computer. Ryan decided to enter in his own name when I got to the part about the person who would be handling the negotiations, the person in charge of calls. You don't speak English, do you, William? Let me do it. In contrast to someone who has only completed middle school, I have actual international experience. His smile was smug as he typed. Without first talking to me, he even began adding elements that hadn't been decided upon yet. Something inside of me snapped. Enough. A job is not a game. Ryan flinched at my abrupt yell, but he got to his feet and attempted to overtake me. You should take a step back. This type of task shouldn't even be left to you, an old man with no education. It's pitiful how David grovels to you, and you're just an old man with nothing to offer but your age. In the warehouse, someone like you ought to be cooped up in the back sorting papers. Instead, why don't you go do that? I got up too after Ryan's tirade. You should know better than to use such language in a business setting. I'm still your senior. How does hearing such derogatory remarks affect your coworkers, in your opinion? Ryan was shocked by my loud voice. He seemed really astonished because I didn't often raise my voice. I didn't care, though. You haven't even thoroughly examined these materials, I said, gesturing to the papers arranged on the table. You have no knowledge of the other business. You haven't even bothered to ask me any questions or conduct any investigation. Knowing your negotiating partner is the fundamental rule of this work. Have you not even been taught the fundamentals? Ryan slammed his laptop closed, his face flushed. Then he stormed out of the conference room, grabbing his laptop. He clicked his tongue loudly as he walked away. Why don't you simply do all the dirty labor yourself, old man, if that's how you're going to be? As a part-time worker, You should only do the essentials. Wait. When I called for him, Ryan continued to walk and vanished into thin air. I watched him disappear behind the door, and then I calmed down. I sat down by myself in the now quiet conference room and took a big breath. Given the intensity of our dispute, I assumed Ryan wouldn't report to work the following day. Perhaps I ought to have handled it more composedly. As I made my way to work that morning, I experienced a slight sense of regret and loneliness. But as soon as I got there, Ryan walked right over to me with a somewhat arrogant expression. "William, good morning. Whoa, you've already changed your perspective. That's really amazing." I was so amazed by Ryan's speedy recuperation that I also gave him a warm greeting. "Oh, good morning, Ryan." "About yesterday." I started, but Ryan interrupted and gave me a piece of paper. I looked at him curiously as I accepted it. "I've completed the task already. I'm fast at this stuff, unlike a part-timer." "What is this?" "We were working on the report yesterday. Don't tell me you've already forgotten. It was the document that we had collaborated on. You've already completed the report in spite of our differences." "Well, at least you didn't include any of the details we hadn't finalized." I began reading the document with relief, but something didn't feel right. Upon arriving at the portion containing the financial data, I verified the numbers 1, 2, and 3 times. As I frantically reviewed the numbers, Ryan erupted in laughter and clutched his stomach. "Are you criticizing the document because it was created by a novice? A Harvard graduate like me would never make a mistake. In addition, I've already forwarded it. You sent it to the client." "Obviously. Remember that I work quickly." I was taken aback by what Ryan said. After yesterday, I was determined not to raise my voice, but I couldn't resist shouting. "Hey, this sum is incorrect. This might cost our business $1 million if it succeeds." "What?" My voice reverberated throughout the department, and then, as if to heighten the tension, a phone rang. When the internal line buzzed, I responded right away. "This is William from the Department of Foreign Sales." "Hi there. Is Ryan present? The French chapter of St. Corporation has called for him." It was Ryan's call. He grabbed the phone out of my grasp and requested to connect. I watched Ryan nervously as the connection to the French branch was connected and I was unable to hear the other person's voice. Ryan started talking on the phone in English. His statements seemed to be repeated repeatedly, but then he abruptly shifted to hesitating in French. It appeared that his English was not understood by the other side. A loud voice on the other end of the line was heard while I watched in increasing alarm, and then the phone was abruptly cut off. Slowly lowering the receiver, Ryan stood stunned. I gave his shoulder a light tap. "What did they say?" Ryan's expression contorted in rage as soon as I asked, and he smacked my hand away. "Avoid playing tricks on me. Old man, you're to blame. This wouldn't have occurred if you had simply completed everything and submitted the paperwork yesterday." I took a deep breath instinctively as he spoke, but this time I was able to maintain my composure. "Avoid blaming others. This was the result of your careless behavior. Tell me what they said, please." "Stop talking. I'm still getting used to it." "You didn't understand, did you?" "Stop talking." Despite my limited knowledge of French, I was able to understand the words. I tried to stabilize Ryan by putting a soothing touch on his shoulder. "Slow down. Make sure to take notes the next time you speak with them on the phone, and let me explain anything you don't understand. Acknowledging your ignorance is a crucial aspect of becoming a professional." "Then you do it, old man." Ryan interrupted me because he was so frustrated. "You ignorant fool, you dare not boss me around. Just perform your work and stop wasting time with your useless advice." He chuckled at me and gestured toward the phone. It was a scornful, mocking chuckle. "Go ahead, give it a shot. You believe you're really intelligent, don't you? Mr. Middle School Education, let's see what you can do." The individual on the other end speaks French, by the way. Like a razor, Ryan's comments became more and more piercing, but there was no time for this. We had to get to work. We were running out of time, so I took a quick look at the clock. I grudgingly hit the button to dial the number again. On our end, the phone rang. This is Street Corporation's French branch. Hi, this is Japan's inspirational operator. Please let me talk to your representative. Yes, of course. Just a minute. I turned to look at Ryan. He was staring at me with wide eyes and a slightly open lips. The fact that I could speak French obviously surprised him. Hey, this is not how we can communicate. You also speak French well. I sincerely regret what I did previously. I'll be answering the phone. My name is William. Oh, at last. Someone who comprehends me. Fantastic. I had an urgent matter to discuss, so I contacted. It has to do with the papers you sent this morning. I offered my heartfelt apologies and explained the mistakes in the paperwork. I promised to quickly prepare new, updated documents and deliver them again. Luckily, we were able to avoid any major repercussions because the financial statistics had not yet been finalized and it was still in the review stage. I was relieved, so I thanked the agent and hung up. Woo! We were fortunate to catch it in time. I looked straight at Ryan. You know, they said they couldn't understand a word of your French. So, what if you can speak French? Ryan was ready to respond when the internal phone rang once again. Startled, Ryan leaped. Beep. I apologize, but there are a lot of calls coming in. In addition to the Italian and Spanish branches, there is one from Street Corporation's Chinese branch. Ryan's face went white. I looked at him and realized right once that Ryan probably only spoke English. I hurriedly grabbed the phone and requested that the operator connect me to each branch one at a time. Hello, this is William speaking. I started using Chinese to communicate with the individual on the other end. No time to see how Ryan would respond. I answered calls in a variety of languages, including Spanish, Italian, and Chinese. It had been a long time by the time I was done. I was relieved that the last call was over and took a deep breath. I took a seat and quickly copied my call notes into my notepad. Before I forgot, I had to let the appropriate departments know the specifics. Could you please recalculate the numbers on the docs you created, Ryan? Let's promptly fix them and send them to the branches again. Yes. When I saw Ryan's feeble reaction, I turned to face him. His expression was lifeless, displaying the remorse and annoyance of making a mistake while typing on his computer. Without looking at me, Ryan posed a question to me. How many languages can you speak? About 10, I wrote back. There were people from those regions in my previous job, so once I explained the situation, they understood immediately, and the calls went smoothly. It appears that we can resolve any issue. We truly escaped a bullet. But if it's in English, I cooled. In an attempt to defend himself, Ryan stumbled. In the hopes that it would finally reach him, I couldn't resist sharing what I had heard. You're a really arrogant guy, according to Michael from the American branch. You work quickly, but you make a lot of mistakes, he said. Additionally, he asserted that proficiency in English does not equate to excellence. What? Additionally, it's really difficult to understand your English. I found it difficult to follow, and Michael admitted that he had trouble understanding you at points. To prevent interfering with the work, he intends to urge David to let me handle your responsibilities until you are able to communicate more effectively. To be honest, you've merely made my plate bigger. After saying this, Ryan had a deceived look on his face when I turned to face him. He had never before been made aware of this, it appeared. I stopped working and looked straight at Ryan. Although language serves as a tool for communication, the motivation behind it is what counts most. Communication should come naturally. There's no use showing it off. English proficiency alone did not earn you a Harvard degree. All right. You were able to achieve more because you put a lot of effort into your studies and learned how to use English. In an attempt to uplift Ryan, I gave him a gentle pat on the back. When I was younger, I also made a lot of errors. Despite the fact that I'd barely completed middle school, I was frequently made fun of for it. I'm here now because I put in a lot of work and conquered those obstacles. Now, Ryan, it's acceptable to make mistakes because you're still young. Just be careful not to do them again. Ryan had been shouting, but now he was silent. He seemed to think about what I had said as he looked down. He finally gave a silent nod of agreement. I returned to my work satisfied. Okay, let's resume our job. Don't worry, we've made it this far. Let's continue and get the job done, shall we? Ryan answered quietly. After that, there were no more disagreements between us, and the work proceeded without incident. It was finally the conclusion of the workday. The sky outside the window was completely dark. Usually, I would begin packing things with a feeling of achievement, but today I had another destination to go with Ryan. We knocked on the door in front of us, both of us feeling anxious. The door was marked with the words President's Office. Knock, knock. Enter. It's William and Ryan. Ah, enter. We apologize. We opened the President's office door together. Our president, Mr. Anderson, was inside, his face grim with rage. Today's error was the topic of this meeting. Although it had been a tight call, we had barely avoided suffering a significant loss. I told Mr. Anderson what was going on right away. What were you thinking, Ryan? Mr. Anderson reprimanded Ryan while he was still upright. If he had previously appeared pale, he was now almost ghostly white. He looked like a walking corpse, his face devoid of any color. It's likely that he was mentally projecting the worst scenario. He tightened his fists, bowed his head desperately, and fought back tears. I also bowed deeply to Mr. Anderson as I stood next to him. The president stopped reprimanding. I'm really sorry, Mr. Anderson. Ryan made a hasty decision, but I too have some responsibility. I didn't fulfill my obligation to properly advise him. I shall now approach my work with a fresh sense of diligence. I continually lowered my head in contrition. When he saw how sincere I was, Mr. Anderson let out a long, tortured sigh and leaned back in his chair. I'll overlook this because of William. However, Ryan, if you make another error like this, you should be ready to quit the company. Ryan glanced up at Mr. Anderson, who gave him a serious nod. Ungrateful. I'll take great effort to avoid making any additional errors. William, thank you so much for it. You two must be worn out now. Leave for home today, and starting tomorrow, let's keep up the good effort. Yes, I'm grateful. Thank you, and enjoy your evening. We bowed once more and slipped out of the president's office. Ryan turned to me and bowed deeply as soon as we were outside. Thank you, William. Thank you so much. He appeared to be a different person. His attitude had entirely altered. Ryan seems to have been reborn. As I was about to go, I waved my hand dismissively, but before I could say anything more, Ryan, full of fresh resolve, bowed at the waist in a respectful gesture. Let me learn from you, William, please. In this work, I wish to watch and absorb your example. Tell me everything you know, please. I genuinely ask you to do this. I felt valued after hearing what he had to say, and I couldn't help but smile while I scratched my cheek. Just be sure to observe and take notes, okay? Ryan was somewhat more modest after that. He seemed like a totally different person. He completely ceased boasting and started paying close attention to what other people had to say. He promptly sought guidance when issues emerged. Our big project went off without a hitch and without any more errors. Working closely with him, I saw that he had a keen mind thanks to his Harvard degree. He was incredibly competent, learning new abilities fast and using them successfully. He was a man of extraordinary talent. Even his English problems, which I had observed, greatly improved when I pointed them out. Ryan took the criticism seriously and put a lot of effort into fixing his errors, which greatly improved the readability of his English. Although it might be challenging to change deeply rooted language and habits, Ryan made the effort to practice consistently. To gauge his progress, I had to attempt to call our American contact, Michael. Michael felt a great sense of admiration. He gave Ryan his complete support, saying, "Now I can trust him with this." My workload started to lessen as a result, and I now have more time in my schedule because I can take time off anytime I choose. I still work, but I now love taking trips overseas with my wife. Everyone has made mistakes. Nobody has ever succeeded without failing at some point. But the most important thing is what you do when you make a mistake. I've come to think that as long as you keep striving to improve, it's acceptable to fail frequently. At my age, I've learned again that it's more essential to learn from your mistakes and move on rather than to hide them.
I slammed the front door behind me, my hands trembling with rage. The image of my husband Caleb, tangled in bed with my own sister Jenna, was seared into my mind, an unspeakable betrayal that shattered my world. "You lying, cheating bastard," I screamed, storming into the bedroom. Caleb sprang up, his face drained of color as Jenna clutched the sheets around her naked body. "Vivian? I can explain," Caleb stammered, panic flashing in his eyes. "Explain what?" I spat. "That you've been screwing my own flesh and blood behind my back?" Jenna tossed her head defiantly. "Don't act so shocked, sis. You're just an old boring wife. He needs a woman who can keep him excited." White-hot fury flooded my veins as I fought the urge to lunge at her. Caleb stepped between us, his expression a sickening mix of guilt and desperation. "Baby, you're imagining things. This isn't what it looks like. Don't you dare gaslight me." I raged at my husband of 12 years. "I saw it with my own eyes. How could you do this to me, to our marriage?" Jenna smirked. "Face it, Viv. He got tired of your career-obsessed act. I'm just giving him what he really wants." Revulsion churned in my gut as I took in her smug, self-satisfied sneer. This was my baby sister, the girl I helped raise after our parents died, and she had violated the ultimate taboo by sleeping with my husband in our marital bed. "Get out," I said in a low, trembling voice. "Both of you. Get your things and get out of my house right now." Caleb refused to leave that night, claiming the house was as much his as mine. I spent a sleepless night on the couch, my mind replaying the sordid scene over and over. How could the man I loved, the man who had once doted on me, betray me in such a cruel way? And with Jenna, of all people. As the sun rose, I dragged myself up and poured a strong coffee, needing to be clear-headed. I opened the photo album stuffed in the hall closet, flipping through the happy memories of our early years together. We had been the perfect power couple. I was a rising star at Boston's most prestigious law firm, while Caleb had started his own construction company from the ground up. Putting in grueling hours, we lifted each other up, my legal skills helping him win big contracts. His business began thriving, allowing me to take a slightly less demanding role to try for the family we both desperately wanted. But after years of fertility treatments and heartbreak, Caleb grew resentful of the sacrifices he'd made. He started staying later at work sites, picking fights over little things. I was too wrapped up in keeping my career afloat to see the cracks in our foundation. "You look like hell," Caleb's gruff voice made me jump. He stood in the hallway, already dressed for work in his dusty boots. "Gee, I wonder why," I shot back acidly. "My husband's been cheating on me with my own sister. That might mess with someone's beauty sleep." He sighed, raking a hand through his graying hair. "I never meant to hurt you, Viv. Things just got out of hand with Jenna." "Oh, so it just accidentally fell into her? That's quite a feat." Anger flashed across his face. "Don't get snarky with me. You've been married to your job for years, while I killed myself providing for us." "Providing for us?" I laughed bitterly. "My 6-figure salary is the only reason your little construction gig ever got off the ground in the first place." The barb struck home. Caleb's jaw clenched as he grabbed his truck keys. "I'm not doing this with you. I've got work to get to." "That's what you're best at," I called after him. "Walking away from your problems." The front door slammed, leaving me alone with the shattered pieces of my life. I looked at our happy wedding photo, wondering when everything had gone so wrong between us, and why my own sister had to be the one to destroy it all. Over the next few weeks, I tried to go about my daily life as if nothing had changed, but Caleb's emotional withdrawal from me, from our marriage, was becoming impossible to ignore. He would come home late most nights, reeking of whiskey and avoiding my gaze. I'd try to ask about his day, only to be met with grunts or one-word answers. The man I had fallen in love with, passionate, driven, always ready with a joke to make me laugh, was fading away before my eyes. My suspicions were raised further by the constant presence of Jenna in our lives. Despite the horrific betrayal, she would show up at our house uninvited, demanding Caleb's attention for some drama in her life, and he would drop everything to comfort her, to be her shoulder to cry on. Jenna's going through a really tough time right now with the divorce, he mumbled one night after getting off the phone with her. I need to swing by and check on her. Again? I asked pointedly. You were just over there last night fixing something at her place. He avoided my accusing stare. She needs me, Viv. Her soon-to-be ex is giving her hell over the house. Well, I need you too, I exploded, feeling the sting of his indifference. Or have you forgotten that small fact? Caleb simply shrugged, grabbing his keys. I'll be back later. Don't wait up. The front door closed with a sense of finality. I stood there, my fists clenched, as the now familiar feelings of dread and denial washed over me. Surely I was imagining things. Caleb may have been pulling away, but he loved me. He would never... My spiraling thoughts were interrupted by the shrill ring of the phone. Jenna's number flashed on the caller ID, taunting me. What? I snapped, unable to hide my hostility. Vivian? Her voice was hushed, almost trembling. I think Caleb is on his way over. I really need you here. My heart plummeted into my stomach. Need me there? For what exactly? There was a pause, then Jenna spoke in that same tremulous tone. I'm scared, sis. I'm all alone, and the noises from outside. I just feel safer when you're around. I squeezed my eyes shut, nausea rising. She was baiting me, testing to see if her lies could reel me in like a foolish, unsuspecting fish. Did she and Caleb think I was that blind? Save it, Jenna, I said in a low, controlled voice. If you want to screw my husband, you can leave me out of it. The line went dead as my worst fears were confirmed. The man I loved and my own traitorous sister were making a mockery of me right under my nose. But I refused to go down without a fight. I knew I couldn't go on like this, living in denial, letting Caleb and Jenna make a fool of me. I needed proof of their affair before I could decide my next move. So I swallowed my pride and hired a private investigator recommended by a friend. Mike Connolly was a no-nonsense ex-cop who didn't blink an eye at the seedier details of my situation. Cheating spouses are a dime a dozen, he said gruffly. I'll get you the evidence you need. A week later, Mike showed up at my office with a thick manila envelope. Sorry it took a little longer than expected, Mrs. Weston. Your husband's craftier than I gave him credit for. My hands shook as I opened the envelope and the damning photos spilled out. There was Caleb, his arms wrapped around Jenna in a passionate embrace outside a cheap motel. Another showed them in an alley, her legs locked around his waist as they kissed hungrily. Bile rose in my throat looking at the graphic proof, but I forced myself to keep going. Mike had also included transcripts of recorded phone conversations that left no doubt about the nature of their affair. You're all I think about every minute of the day. Caleb's voice crackled through the speakers as I hit play. I can't wait to leave that dried-up sexless marriage and be with you, baby. Jenna's throaty laughter made my skin crawl. Don't worry, lover. Once I bleed that cold bitch dry in the divorce, we'll have more than enough to start over together. The vile words kept coming as I sat numb, tears streaming down my cheeks. This was the man I had loved, the man I had sacrificed for year after year, and he saw me as nothing but a walking ATM to use and discard. I've heard enough, I choked out, shutting off the recorder. Mike watched me impassively as I struggled to compose myself. So what's the plan now, Mrs. Weston? You want me to follow him some more, get more evidence for the divorce proceedings? I stared at the lurid photos of my husband and sister, feeling a scorching anger take hold. Divorce wasn't enough, not for the soul-crushing way they had betrayed me, not for their casual discussion of bleeding me dry. No more following, I said in a low, dangerous voice. I've seen all I need to see. Mike frowned. Then what do you want me to do? A slow, vindictive smile spread across my face as the perfect plan took shape. I want you to keep watching them, Mr. Connolly, but not for me. I leaned forward, reveling in the first stirrings of vengeance. For them. Because by the time I'm through, they'll have much bigger problems than a divorce. With the proof of Caleb and Jenna's affair burning a hole in my brain, I forced myself to continue acting normal around them. It wasn't easy, picturing their naked bodies intertwined while Caleb came home and pecked my cheek like nothing had changed. Working late again? I kept my tone light as he grabbed a beer from the fridge. Caleb grunted in response. Yeah, big project coming due. You know how it is. Of course. I gave him a sad smile. I'm just gonna miss you, that's all. He paused, a flicker of something like guilt crossing his face before the usual blankness returned. Don't wait up, he mumbled, already heading for the door. As soon as it closed, my fake smile vanished. Reaching into my purse, I pulled out the burner phone I'd purchased and tapped out a message. He's on the move. Let me know where he ends up. Mike Connolly's response came quickly. You got it. I spent the evening poring over Caleb's financial statements, construction contracts, and other business documents. As a corporate lawyer, I knew all the loopholes, the sleight-of-hand tricks companies use to cut corners. Shady labor practices, environmental violations, tax evasion, you name it, I'd helped clients get around it. Now I would use that knowledge to burn Caleb's entire empire to the ground. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A new address from Mike, along with a terse message. Motel again. White-hot fury lanced through me as I pictured them together, laughing at my oblivious suffering. I wanted to storm over there to scream the truth and make them face the consequences. But I forced myself to stay calm, to keep my eyes on the prize, making them pay in the most devastating way possible. Over the next few weeks, I began deploying a strategic series of anonymous calls and tips to various regulatory agencies, code violations on multiple construction sites, improper disposal of hazardous materials, undocumented workers being paid under the table. At first, it was just minor fines and work stoppages, which Caleb angrily tried to dispute. But I kept hitting him from all sides, the IRS, the EPA, the Department of Labor. His panicked calls and texts went unanswered as I busied myself with other important cases at the office. What the hell is going on? He roared when he finally made it home one night, slamming his fist on the counter. Every single one of my sites is under investigation. I looked up from my book with a neutral expression. I'm so sorry, babe. I had no idea things were that bad at work. His bloodshot eyes bored into me before he seemed to deflate with a frustrated sigh. I gotta get a handle on this, Viv. The fines are crippling me, and if they actually shut me down... I crossed the room and placed a soothing hand on his arm, trying not to smirk at the raw panic in his voice. It'll be okay. You've worked too hard to let this take you down. Caleb pulled me into a stiff hug, his body tense. I don't know what I'd do without you, he muttered into my hair. You're about to find out, I thought with grim satisfaction, because by the time I'm done, you'll have lost everything. The next few months were torture, watching Caleb's world crumble around him. Construction sites were shut down left and right amid the mounting investigations. Fines and legal fees piled up into the millions. Employees walked off the job as payroll bounced. Yet through it all, the smug bastard remained oblivious to the fact that I was the one orchestrating his downfall from the shadows. He tried desperately to get ahead of the allegations, hiring lawyers and consultants to do damage control. But I was always one step ahead, anonymous tip leading to another disastrous blow. Jenna, of course, was firmly by his side the entire time, playing the supportive, concerned girlfriend as Caleb unraveled. No doubt she was counting down the days until his business assets would be stripped away in the divorce, leaving her free to swoop in as his sugar baby. "This is insane, Viv," Caleb yelled one night, pacing furiously as I calmly sipped tea. "They're threatening to pull my contractor's license, to freeze all my accounts." "Well, did you do the things they're accusing you of?" I asked mildly. "Maybe you should just come clean if you've been cutting corners." His face went beet red with rage. "I'm not a crook. Someone is setting me up. Don't you see that?" "Or maybe," a silky voice came from the hallway, "you're just reaping what you sowed after treating your wife and business like dirt for so long." Jenna slinked into the room, eyes glittering with undisguised malice aimed at me. I felt a flicker of disgust at her blatant attempt to turn Caleb against me even further. "Stay out of this, Jen," Caleb growled. You don't know what the hell you're talking about." But she ignored him, sidling up to rub his arm soothingly. "Poor baby, you're under so much stress. Maybe it's time you finally face the truth. Vivian is the one behind all this." I barely hid my smirk as Caleb's head whipped around, eyes narrowing at me with sudden suspicion. "What is she talking about?" "Think about it, lover," Jenna purred, shooting me a triumphant look. "Who else could be doing this to you? Vivian's a corporate lawyer. She knows all the loopholes, the ways to bleed a company dry from the inside." Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it slowly as realization seemed to dawn. I held his gaze steadily, daring him to break first. "Is it true?" he finally rasped out, fists clenched at his sides. "Have you been the one destroying my life's work all this time, burning everything I built to the ground?" I let out a soft chuckle, reveling in his shock and horror. "Finally caught on, did you? Yeah, it's all been me. Every violation, every fine, every shutdown order." I stood, feeling powerful as I towered over both of their stunned faces. "And I'm not done yet, not by a long shot. You're going to lose everything, Caleb. Your business, your money, your reputation, all of it." Jenna's mouth worked soundlessly as I turned my icy glare on her. "And you're going to be left with absolutely nothing when the gravy train dries up. No business to bleed, no man to leech off of." "You bitch," she finally spat out, color rising in her cheeks. "We never did anything wrong. Save it." I held up a hand, digging into my purse to pull out the thick manila envelope. "I have all the proof I need of your sordid little affair, all the photos, all the recordings of your crude pillow talk." I tossed it at their feet, reveling in their twin expressions of shock and shame as the lurid evidence spilled out. "So go ahead," I said with a tight smile. "Try and talk your way out of this one. I'll be waiting." For days after my grand reveal, Caleb and Jenna avoided me like the plague. He'd leave before I got up and return late, holed up in his study. Jenna stopped coming around altogether, much to my relief. I could feel them stewing, scheming, wondering how to slither their way out of the disastrous situation I'd put them in. Good luck with that, I thought with grim satisfaction. I had them dead to rights. Finally, about a week later, Caleb approached me with hunched shoulders and a hangdog expression. "Viv, we need to talk." I arched an eyebrow but remained silent as he sank onto the couch beside me. Up close, I could see his haggard appearance, red-rimmed eyes, graying stubble, the once confident man, utterly broken. I don't know what to say," he began haltingly. "What you did, the way you dismantled everything I built from nothing." He shook his head slowly. "It was a masterful job." A tiny smirk played across my lips at the begrudging compliment. "I do have a particular skill set." "You've won," Caleb sighed, dropping his head into his hands. "The company is being forcibly dissolved. The banks are seizing assets, properties, there's nothing left." "Gee, that's too bad." I inspected my nails nonchalantly. "But I'm sure you and Jenna have enough socked away to keep you comfortable for a while, right?" His jaw clenched at the mention of her name. "Jenna's gone, for good." My eyebrows rose in surprise. "Oh? Did the little mistress finally get bored once the cash dried up?" "Don't start," Caleb warned, a flash of anger in his eyes. "She's out of my life. Out of our lives." "Smart man," I murmured, studying him appraisingly. "Maybe not such an idiot after all if you dumped the leech." He drew a deep, shuddering breath. "Look, you've made your point, okay? You wanted to make me suffer, and you did it. I'm ruined, bankrupt, my whole life destroyed because of my stupid mistakes." I opened my mouth, but he barreled on. "The only thing I have left is this house, the house you bled and sacrificed for just as much as me." His eyes bored into me intently. "Just take it, Vivian. Take it all in the divorce, and I'll walk away with nothing. You'll have your justice." I felt a surge of vicious glee, but kept my expression neutral. That's an interesting proposal, though forgive me for not exactly trusting you at the moment." "I'm not asking you to trust me," Caleb said roughly. "I'm asking you to take everything and leave me with the clothes on my back, if that's what you want. It's the least I deserve, after how I treated you." I studied him silently for a long moment, wheels spinning in my mind. This was it, the final delicious act of my revenge, to strip him of every last thing he valued, to leave him a broken, shamed husk of a man. "All right, Caleb," I said at last. "I'll take your offer, Draw up the papers to sign over this house, the property, everything to me in the divorce, and you'd better not cross me, because if you try to weasel out of it—" I let the threat hang in the air. He swallowed hard and gave a solemn nod. "You have my word. Just tell me where to sign." I smiled thinly and stood, heading for the kitchen to pour myself a glass of wine. My petty, vindictive plan was finally complete. But I wouldn't stop there. Not until I had utterly and completely destroyed both Caleb and Jenna, leaving them as empty husks. They would know the soul-crushing pain of utter betrayal, and I would savor every agonizing second of it. The next few months were a whirlwind as I solidified my control over Caleb's decimated company and assets. True to his word, he signed over the deed to the house and all remaining property, leaving himself with nothing. I took a perverse pleasure in watching him slink around like a whipped dog, forced to move into a grungy apartment and take whatever construction labor jobs he could find. The mighty businessman brought to his knees by the wife he had so callously betrayed. As for Jenna, she had indeed slunk away into the shadows once Caleb's money ran out. I couldn't help but revel in the thought of my traitorous sister living in squalor, having tasted the high life only to have it torn away. Maybe now she'd think twice before trying to steal another woman's husband. With my laser focus and legal expertise, I was able to streamline and rebuild the construction company into a highly profitable, ethically run operation. Contracts were renegotiated, shady practices eliminated, and I brought in a trusted team to oversee day-to-day management. Watching the business thrive again under my guidance was deeply satisfying. This was my vengeance made whole, taking everything Caleb had worked for and making it better, stronger, more successful than he ever could, all while he scraped by on menial labor wages. A small part of me knew I should feel sated, that I had gotten the ultimate revenge for his unforgivable betrayal. But there was still that lingering ember of resentment, that urge to keep twisting the knife until he and Jenna were left as empty, debased shells. My chance came a few months later, when there was a loud pounding on my door one evening. I opened it to find Caleb disheveled and wild-eyed on my front step. "You've got to help me," he rasped urgently. "It's Jenna. She's in trouble." Despite my distaste, I felt a prickle of concern. "What kind of trouble?" He ran a shaky hand through his lank hair. "She's been crashing on my buddy's couch, trying to hustle drinks at this skeezy bar, racking up debt with the wrong people, if you know what I mean." My jaw clenched as I realized he was insinuating Jenna had turned to prostitution and petty crime to keep a roof over her head. As much as she had betrayed me, she was still my baby sister. "And you want what exactly?" I asked coolly. "For me to save the day with money? After everything?" Caleb swallowed hard, his bravado seeming to deflate. "Please, Vivian, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but she's in deep. I can't let anything happen to her." I stared at him for a long moment, feeling a flicker of the man I had once loved beneath the broken, desperate exterior. As much as he had hurt me, some part of him still cared for Jenna, still wanted to protect her. With a heavy sigh, I turned and retrieved my purse, pulling out a wad of cash. "Here," I said gruffly, pressing it into his palm. "Get her out of whatever hellhole she's in and back on her feet. But that's it. I'm not getting involved further than that." Caleb's eyes widened as he clutched the money. "Viv, thank you. You don't know what this means." I held up a hand to cut him off. "Don't thank me. Just take the money and go before I change my mind." He gave a jerky nod, something like shame flickering across his features before he turned and hurried away into the night. I watched him go, feeling a strange sense of melancholy amid the satisfaction. My revenge was complete. I had taken everything from the two people who betrayed me most, leaving them penniless and alone. So why did this victory feel so hollow?